In the heart of Brooklyn, New York, nestled between brownstone buildings, was a cozy cafe named Evermore. Among its regular patrons was Eleanor Winters, a sprightly 68-year-old widow with silver-streaked hair that she always kept in a neat bun. She had spent most of her life as a librarian, surrounded by stories of adventure and love, yet her own life had settled into a quiet rhythm after the passing of her husband 10 years ago. And that's where we'll take a quick break. Before we continue, if you haven't already, please hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and turn on the bell icon to stay updated with our latest content. Also, let us know in the comments below what you think. Your feedback really helps us. Now, let's dive back in. Eleanor visited the cafe every Sunday afternoon, her escape from the solitude of her apartment. She'd sip on chamomile tea while flipping through her favorite novels. The cafe had a charm of its own. String lights hanging from the ceiling, bookshelves lining the walls, and the hum of soft jazz in the background. One Sunday, Eleanor noticed someone new. Sitting a few tables away was a man in his early 50s, his salt and pepper hair neatly combed, and a sketch pad in his hands. He was sketching with an intensity that piqued her curiosity. Their eyes met briefly, and he offered her a warm smile. Eleanor smiled back, feeling a flutter she hadn't experienced in years. The following week, Eleanor found herself scanning the room as she entered Evermore, hoping to see the mystery artist again. To her delight, he was there, seated in the same spot. This time, he approached her table. "Hello, I'm Thomas," he said, his voice deep and soothing. "I couldn't help but notice how peaceful you looked reading last week. May I join you?" Eleanor nodded, slightly taken aback, but intrigued. "I'm Eleanor. And yes, please." As they talked, Eleanor learned that Thomas was an architect who had recently moved to Brooklyn. He had a passion for sketching old buildings, capturing their stories in his drawings. Their conversation flowed effortlessly, and Eleanor found herself laughing, a sound she hadn't heard from herself in a long time. A blossoming connection. Over the weeks, Eleanor and Thomas began meeting regularly. They explored the city together, from the vibrant streets of Manhattan to the serene paths of Central Park. Thomas would sketch while Eleanor read aloud from her favorite books. They discovered shared interests, a love for jazz, a fondness for poetry, and an appreciation for life's quieter moments. One evening, as the autumn leaves painted the city in shades of gold and crimson, Thomas invited Eleanor to a rooftop jazz concert. The music filled the air as the city skyline twinkled in the background. During a slow, soulful number, Thomas extended his hand. "May I have this dance?" he asked. Eleanor hesitated for a moment, then took his hand. As they swayed to the rhythm, she felt a warmth in her chest, a rekindling of emotions she thought she'd buried forever. A love rekindled. Their bond deepened with time. Thomas would surprise Eleanor with handwritten notes tucked into her favorite books, and she would bake his favorite lemon tarts, a recipe from her late husband. They acknowledged the shadow of their pasts, but embraced the joy of their present. One snowy evening in December, Thomas invited Eleanor to his apartment. He had prepared a candlelit dinner, complete with soft jazz playing in the background. As they finished their meal, Thomas brought out his sketchpad. "I've been working on something," he said, his voice tinged with nervousness. He flipped the pages to reveal a drawing of Eleanor, her face framed by the light from Evermore. Below the sketch were the words, "Will you share the rest of your story with me?" Eleanor's eyes filled with tears as she looked at him. "Yes, Thomas. I would love nothing more. Evermore." Eleanor and Thomas's love story became one of second chances. They celebrated their companionship, proving that age was no barrier to love. Together, they reopened Evermore as a bookstore cafe, where others could find inspiration, connection, and perhaps even a new beginning. And every Sunday, as the cafe hummed with life, Eleanor and Thomas would sit by the window, sharing their stories and writing new chapters together, proof that love, like a good book, has no expiration date. After that magical evening, Eleanor and Thomas began merging their lives in small, meaningful ways. Thomas started spending more time at Eleanor's apartment, helping her rearrange her bookshelves and introducing her to his favorite jazz records. Eleanor, in turn, brought a new energy into Thomas's art, encouraging him to showcase his sketches at local galleries. Their Sunday routine at Evermore transformed into a shared ritual of creativity. Eleanor would curate book recommendations for customers, while Thomas sketched portraits of patrons who wanted to capture a memory of the cozy cafe. The pair quickly became beloved by the community, their story inspiring others to take chances on love and new beginnings. But as their relationship grew, so did the challenges. Facing the past. One evening, as they were sorting through old photo albums at Eleanor's place, she came across a picture of her late husband, Richard. She paused, tracing her fingers over the photo, a bittersweet smile on her face. "He was a good man," Eleanor said softly. "Losing him, it felt like I lost a part of myself. I never thought I could feel this way again." Thomas gently took her hand. "I'm not here to replace him, Eleanor. I'm here because I see you, the incredible woman you are now. And I'm grateful for every moment we share." The honesty of their conversation deepened their connection. Eleanor realized she didn't have to let go of her past to embrace her future with Thomas. Thomas, too, shared his own vulnerabilities. He opened up about his divorce and the estranged relationship with his adult daughter, Claire. "She thinks I'm chasing something I can't have," he admitted. "But meeting you has taught me that it's never too late to find joy again." Eleanor encouraged Thomas to reconnect with Claire. Together, they wrote her a heartfelt letter, inviting her to visit New York and meet Eleanor. A new chapter begins. Months later, Claire visited the cafe. She was skeptical at first, but as she watched her father and Eleanor interact, her guarded demeanor softened. Over coffee and laughter, the three began to form a tentative bond. Eleanor and Claire found common ground in their love of literature. They spent afternoons discussing their favorite books, with Thomas smiling in the background, grateful to see two of the most important women in his life connecting. Evermore's big night. 1 year after their first meeting, Thomas decided to host an art exhibition at Evermore. He showcased sketches of the cafe, its patrons, and the vibrant streets of Brooklyn. But the centerpiece of the exhibit was a series of drawings capturing moments with Eleanor. Eleanor reading by the cafe window, sunlight framing her face. The two of them dancing on the rooftop under the stars. A candid sketch of her laughing, her eyes sparkling with joy. As the evening came to a close, Thomas stood before the gathered crowd. "This exhibition isn't just about art," he said. "It's about love, the kind that surprises you, that gives you hope when you least expect it. Eleanor, you've given me a second chance at life, and for that, I'm forever grateful." With everyone watching, Thomas took Eleanor's hand. "I don't need grand gestures or promises of forever. I just want to spend every day I have left with you. Will you move in with me, Eleanor?" Tears streamed down Eleanor's cheeks as she nodded. "Yes, Thomas. I'd love to." The crowd erupted into applause, celebrating the couple who had proven that love could bloom at any stage of life. Happily ever after, Eleanor and Thomas moved into a cozy apartment overlooking the park, where they continued to create memories together. They traveled to small towns to explore hidden bookshops and art galleries, hosted poetry nights at Evermore, and found joy in the everyday moments, reading, dancing, and simply being in each other's company. Their story became a beacon of hope in the community, reminding everyone that life has a way of surprising you, no matter your age. And so, in the glow of string lights and the hum of soft jazz, Eleanor and Thomas lived their happily ever after, proof that it's never too late for love. One cool autumn evening, Thomas surprised Eleanor with a private dinner on the rooftop of his building. Candles flickered in glass jars, and soft jazz played from a vintage record player he'd brought up. The city lights twinkled in the distance as they shared a bottle of wine. As they talked, Thomas gently reached for Eleanor's hand across the table. His fingers traced hers, and she felt a rush of warmth she hadn't experienced in years. "Eleanor," he said, his voice low, "do you know how extraordinary you are?" She looked down, smiling, her cheeks flushing. "I'm just me, Thomas, and that's what I adore about you," he replied. When the evening grew colder, Thomas wrapped his coat around her shoulders and led her to the edge of the rooftop. He turned her toward him, his hands resting lightly on her arms. "Dance with me," he whispered. Without waiting for an answer, he pulled her close. They swayed gently, the rhythm of their steps matching the slow, melodic jazz. At one point, Eleanor rested her head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. It was then, in the glow of the city and the warmth of Thomas's embrace, that Eleanor felt a spark, a reminder that love could be tender, exciting, and timeless. The library kiss. A few weeks later, they visited Eleanor's old library. She wanted to show Thomas the place that had been her sanctuary for decades. As they wandered through the quiet aisles, she shared stories of the books that had shaped her life. "This one," she said, pulling out a tattered copy of Pride and Prejudice, "made me believe in love." Thomas smiled, taking the book from her hands. "And this one," he replied, leaning closer, "makes me believe in us." Before Eleanor could respond, Thomas closed the space between them. His lips brushed her softly at first, as if asking for permission. When she didn't pull away, he deepened the kiss, his hand gently cradling her face. The world around them faded. The library shelves, the faint hum of the air conditioner. All that remained was the warmth of their connection, the electric charge of rediscovered intimacy. An evening of vulnerability. One winter night, a heavy snowfall blanketed the city. They decided to stay in, Thomas cooking dinner while Eleanor selected records to play. After their meal, they sat by the fireplace in Thomas's apartment, wrapped in a shared blanket. Eleanor reached for his hand, tracing the lines of his palm. "I didn't think I'd ever find this again," she admitted. "A connection like this. It feels almost unreal." Thomas cupped her face, his thumb brushing her cheek. "It's very real, Eleanor, and I cherish every moment of it." Their kisses that night were slow and unhurried, filled with an understanding that love at their age wasn't about rushing. It was about savoring. Each touch, each whispered word, was a testament to the life they were building together, keeping the romance alive. Eleanor and Thomas's romance didn't diminish with time. It grew deeper and richer. They found joy in the small moments, holding hands during evening walks, stealing kisses in the cafe's kitchen, and writing love notes to each other. Their intimacy wasn't just physical, it was emotional. They built a relationship rooted in trust, vulnerability, and a mutual appreciation for the life they were sharing.